by Ann Belser/Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Protesters on both sides of the abortion debate mixed it up Saturday in a decidedly Pittsburgh way. The question at hand regarded the big issue of whether abortion should be legal. But it was smaller points that seemed to take up a good deal of energy. Whether an elderly woman carrying an anti-abortion picket sign should step into the street rather than walk through a buffer zone around Planned Parenthood, or who was standing on what piece of sidewalk first. The protest was outside of the Planned Parenthood clinic in the 900 block of Liberty Avenue, downtown, which was targeted in a coordinated nationwide protest organized by a coalition of anti-abortion organizations. The word also got around through the groups that are in favor of abortion rights that the anti-abortion protests would be happening. It set the stage for a confrontation of about 150 anti-abortion protesters and 50 people in favor of keeping the procedure legal on the brick sidewalks that line Liberty Avenue. Pittsburgh police watched the two sides, most of whom were indistinguishable from each other except for the signs they were holding. And, as the two groups mingled, it became impossible to take a truly accurate count of who was supporting what. Katie Fadden, 24, of Pittsburgh was holding the end of a banner that expressed support for Planned Parenthood. Tom Botchfield, 59, of Whitehall was holding a sign showing his opposition to the group when the two found themselves shoulder to shoulder. At the other end of the banner, where Miss Fadden was not standing, anti-abortion protesters were crowding the banner, so the people holding the banner were, over the course of an hour, moving to their left. That shifted Miss Fadden down a little farther so that she wound up nearly against Mr. Botchfield, who did not want to give up his spot by the garbage can. "I was here first, right in front of the garbage can," he said, pointing out how he had been pushed into shifting about 3 feet. Miss Fadden, who was much smaller than both Mr. Botchfield and another man who held a sign above her head and who was nearly touching her back, said she was not intimidated by the men who were crowding her. Instead, she said she was more irritated. A small scuffle, which was more a battle over whose sign would be more visible, took place between two men, Steve Capri, 29, of Observatory Hill and Mark Graham, 58, of Bethel Park. Mr. Capri said he stepped in front of Mr. Graham, an anti-abortion protester, because Mr. Graham, a strongly built man, had pushed his way into the crowd and was right up against some of the women who were holding the pro-Planned Parenthood banner. Mr. Capri, who favors abortion rights, said he was trying to get the women some room. Mr. Graham did not like Mr. Capri standing in front of him. "The guy put his sign in front of mine, so I ripped it out of his hand," Mr. Graham said. While the sign incident was notable, it was the civility on both sides that distinguished this protest. Heather Manning, 33, of Wilkinsburg and Edith Humphrey, 60, of Stanton Heights were on the sidewalk, and as people shouted around them and waved their signs, the two women talked to each other, each presenting their own points in the debate on abortion rights. "I don't want that choice, to have an abortion, to ever be infringed upon," Miss Manning said. "This is a matter of protecting the weakest in our society," Miss Humphrey countered. A similar scene was playing out as Mr. Capri, who had earlier had his sign knocked out of his hands, talked to a group of women. Bonnie Crawford, 55, of Sarver, who had come to downtown to protest, ended her morning by putting her sign under one arm and shaking Mr. Capri's hand. "Nice talking to you," she said, before heading for home. Ann Belser, a Belser at post-gazette.com or 412-263-1699. Ann Belser, a Belser at post-gazette.com, 412-263-1699. First published August 22, 2015, 12:18 p.m.